Hello and welcome back to LTC Heroes Live by Experience Care. My name is Peter Murphy Lewis. I'm your host. Today I'm really excited because I'm talking to an important scholar at the Nebraska Healthcare Association, Amber Lihs, the Life Enrichment Coordinator at South Haven Living Center. Amber, welcome to the program.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
So Amber might be the guest that I've had on this week that I've heard the most amount of comments from non-guests. Really excited to have her on, telling me, that she is kind of an ambassador for young scholars who got to go to DC. Let's start off with your scholarship, and then I'll back it up and talk about how you got in long-term care.
Okay.
Tell me the name of the scholarship and when you applied for it, please.
The Congressional Briefing Scholarship through the Nebraska Healthcare Association. I want to say I applied like earlier in the year. The briefing was in June, so I think I found out by May that I was accepted and going to be going. So.
And what is going? What were you going to be doing?
So what I had the opportunity to do, or what the scholarship does, is it pays for you to go to Washington, D.C. with a group of people from the NHCA, and they take care of everything. They not only pay for, but organize your flights, your hotel, all of those things. And then we spend a few days in DC talking to, people like Deb Fisher and people that can actually affect change in policy for our residents. So
we'll get into the specifics of why whether you're a CNA or you're an executive director, why we should pay attention to policy and reform. And I'll actually bring up some cool things that Dr. Johnson taught me yesterday from Good Sam. But where I want to go with this, I want to understand, I would have imposter syndrome. If I were going to apply for that, one, I'd be like, there's no way I'm worthy. Yeah. Two is I would be like, oh, I'll have a panic attack when I show up. I can't be around these important, smart people. Yeah. Did you go through any of that?
Here's the deal. I feel that way right now with you, but I had heard about the scholarship a few years prior, and maybe I'm going back too far, but
no. The details are good.
Okay.
This is called LTC details.
Okay. So a few years prior, I had actually started the process of applying, and I just thought it would be such a neat experience. I thought, oh, DC, how fun, how neat. COVID happened, everything got shut down. They weren't doing the scholarship or the briefing. So fast forward a couple of years, I apply. So happy that I had that pause, because had I gone prior, I think I would have felt the way you described. I didn't belong there. And I had those moments of, there are people here that are in much higher positions and much higher educated. But this time around, I just, none of that really mattered. I felt so passionate about what my residents have been going through the past couple of years that I just wanted to be there to advocate for them. So it kind of washed the rest away, I think.
Well, let's keep going down advocacy then. Tell me a little bit about your preparation. Did you have talking points that you felt supported from leadership here at the Nebraska? And if so, what were those talking points? Who did you know that you wanted to talk to in towards the politicians? So
I will be honest with you and tell you that politics are not historically of high interest to me. So as far as who is in what roles, kind of naive in that regard. But when we got to when we got to DC, and even prior, NHCA really did a good job of highlighting some specific topics that we could talk about, to the point of even when we met with congressmen, I mean, they had files and folders all prepared with certain bills that would be of interest to them, that would affect what we were talking about. So I felt like my purpose there was very much to drive home the point of why it all matters, because in the end, the residents are the ones that are being affected. NHCA did the legwork and all of the pretty political.
Did you feel well received? Did the politicians listen to you? Were they interested in hearing your story, knowing your opinion?
Yeah. I knew that they were going to sit down with us. I knew that they kind of, had these little blurps of time where they kind of almost probably had to listen to us.
They weren't looking at their TikTok?
Yeah, no. I was blown away when we sat down and I keep saying Deb Fisher just because I think her stands out to me so much. But, she sat next to me and just looked me in the eyes and, was nodding along with what we were saying. And they were so invested. And, even saying, these things that you're talking about, I would love more information. And that's when NHCA was, well, here, we have this packet for you. So, it blew me away. I knew that we were going to meet with them. I knew they were going to give a moment of their time, but I felt like they truly were listening to us, which just felt really great.
I mentioned Dr. Johnson, and yesterday when I interviewed him, I said, what's your favorite part of the day? And he said something that's really surprising. He said, I love talking about policy and reform with leaders in DC. And I said, I need you to explain that to me. I feel very ignorant when it comes to policy. And I also want you to dumb it down and tell me why I should care about reform. And what he explained was from a personal point of view. He said, I like to help the multitude. I like to help more than one person at a time. And some of us in long-term care are really good at the one-on-one.
Yes.
Some, as you noticed, who are in DC are good at helping thousands, if not millions. How has your perspective of policy and reform changed after your experience?
Yeah. So that's just a really neat way of thinking about it. You just got my wheels turning. But I would agree. I feel like, when I went to DC, we've been through so much in facilities. Even our support people at home office, who, by the way, are incredible, but they weren't in the buildings. They weren't in the depth of all of the ick that we were going through. They weren't watching our residents cry as we zoned their neighborhood. They don't get it in the same way. And so having the opportunity to go and speak with people from that nitty-gritty perspective of experience, I'm just skipping over your question.
No, you're doing fine.
That just meant so much to me. And I even told Jaylene, who's president of NHCA, after this experience this year in June, like, I have this drive in me that's like, I have to figure out a way to go back every year, because I come back and I got to tell my residents, I told congressmen about how you want to have a bonfire for our masks, and we're going to also roast hot dogs and marshmallows. But, I got to tell them how I shared their stories and their feelings, and even our team members who are stressed and overwhelmed and sad, letting them know that there's this whole crew of people that are advocating on their behalf too, which I think when you're in the facility, you forget all those different levels of who's working for you and who's working for change and policy. And I was very naive as to who was doing that and how it was happening. And it just opened a whole nother world for me. So
I like the example, of masks, even though that seems way, like something that a conversation in the hallway that we might think everyone knows about. Politicians are busy enough and disconnected enough. They don't know that there's a difference of opinion. I know when I first started doing LTC Heroes right in the middle of COVID, a large percentage of leaders wouldn't say on camera that isolation is killing our seniors. And now people are starting to talk about, we've made some mistakes, so there's some mea culpa going on, and it's not just politicians. Like, there's some guilt and there's some shame. And so adding emotion to what happened during the pandemic on top of reform, they go together, I think.
I have so much respect for people who had to make decisions in regards to how to keep our residents safe. The pressure of that, I just can't even imagine. But, when you're working with these residents and you go home and just feel I thought about leaving long-term care because I didn't feel like what I was doing was serving them correctly, because we weren't losing residents from COVID, but we were losing them because of it, because they were isolated and they weren't engaging with others, and they weren't being challenged physically or intellectually, or, well, they were being challenged emotionally, but they weren't holding anyone's hand. They still don't see our smiles, that's rough stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Amber, I want to now go back to your initiation story.
Yeah.
And you can approach it either in when was someone who brought you into long-term care? Was it happenstance? Did long-term care find you? Or you can tell me when you realized that you were going to be a lifer. Like
Yeah.
what comes when I say that to you, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I can tell you exactly. I was raised by a single mom, and my grandparents were a huge part of raising me and, kind of helping her get by, very close to them. And my grandpa passed away prior to ever needing long-term care, but I watched my grandma go through the process of moving into long-term care, and that experience is what made me realize that that's just where my heart is and where I need to be. She, very stubborn little lady, one of my very best friends, very upset about moving into long-term care. It was really hard to watch. And then you see this shift when she starts to build relationships with nursing and housekeeping and dietary, and they start to learn all of her little quirks as far as how particular she is about her daily routine, to the fact that she's so worried about not having silverware available that she will wrap it in napkins and hide it in her freezer. Just all of those things. They got to know her so well. And even though she was super stubborn and ornery, they loved her so much. And that changed her quality of life immensely. And that is what I just wanted to be and do. So,
And you knew that before you even actually got your feet into a facility.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time with my grandma. I'd visit her every chance I got. And, to the point of even volunteering if they went on an outing and things of that nature. I was in high school. And so that just stuck with me. And I went through the CNA route, did my CNA while I was in high school, and then again after high school. And that wasn't the right fit for me. So I stayed in the healthcare realm, did things like phlebotomy and being a lab assistant and things of that nature. But I just was always still drawn to serving elderly, but wasn't sure how or where. So at some point I stumbled upon Life Enrichment, and that's kind of what.
Before we go to a break, and when we come back, I want to talk some more about the scholarship, because I want to make sure that this gets the attention that it deserves, because I'm sure it exists in other states. I'm from Kansas. I bet it exists there. And so we need some young, passionate people like you applying. But I want to go back to you saying the path that you took as a CNA, because the frontline caregivers are what we are struggling with mostly right now. And I have an opinion that I think in order for us to get young people into this industry, we need to do a better job of showing them that this industry actually matters.
Yes.
So if you had some 16-year-old or 18-year-old or 20-year-old come up to you and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about going down the CNA route. Why should I do it?" What would you tell them, Amber?
I think it's an opportunity to start. Some people stay as a CNA, but it's at least would get you started on a path of a career field that is meaningful. I don't know why serving our elderly is so underrated. Honestly, it's at the last seminar I was at in Kearney, they talked about how working in long-term care is more of a vocation, not just a job or even a career, but it's something that you live for. And so if that's what you want out of life, is you want something that is meaningful for you to do, this is it. This is where you should be.
Yeah,
So
fantastic. Let's go to a real quick break, and we'll come back and we'll get some more info on scholarships.
Okay.
All right, confession time. Yes, I host the LTC Heroes podcast, and hopefully you know that by now, but I can't take all the credit. Jason Long, the CEO of Experience Care, told me 2 years ago when we started this show that this new audio platform had to create value for everyone, whether you're a client of Experience Care's electronic healthcare records or not. He then encouraged me to become a CNA to really help LTC Heroes resonate with caregivers and leaders. And between me and you, he really knew what he was talking about. LTC Heroes has been invited to almost 10 conventions this year alone to finally shine a light on what leaders like you have been doing for decades. It's that sort of knowledge in the industry that really makes me appreciate Experience Care, which is developed customizable and intuitive EHR that makes clinical, financial, and billing processes more efficient and accurate. It transforms workflows into something that makes sense so you can focus on what really matters, caring about your residents. The software is used by assisted living, SNFs, and CCRCs, big and small facilities alike. Countless users have reached out and shared with me that it's really effective in helping them improve their outcomes. I can honestly say that I know my parents would be proud to learn that I work at a place like Experience Care. All right, we're back. Was just chatting with Amber, and she said that we always get to the why, and I think that's what I learned the most from this podcast is interviewing frontline workers and executives. The why is usually what sticks with me when I'm removed from the interview and a week or two away. And hearing so many people talk about how amazing you were, I knew that I was excited to talk with you.
Thank you.
I want to get your advice if there's a young 25 or 30-year-old who's thinking like, I think I want that experience from Amber. I'm a little bit intimidated. What advice do you have for them if they're thinking about applying?
For the scholarship? Mm-hmm. I would say the opportunity, I mean, if you are already serving in long-term care, you know what the wonderful things are, you know what the difficult things are. And going to DC just gives you the opportunity to share that. Sometimes when we're in our facilities, I can go to my administrator who's fantastic, and I can go to home office who's fantastic, but they can assist me, but can they drive that change that we need? So going to DC just gives you that outlet to really share about that. So.
There we go. We, as you all can't see this, but Amber has fans that keep walking by and taking pictures of her. She's a local celebrity. My next question, Amber, is if there's a decent percentage of policymakers who listen to this podcast. What advice do you have for DC? If you had their ears right now in this platform, what would you like to say to them that you either already said to them when you were there or like to change it up?
I would just ask that, and I feel like they did such a good job of this while we were there, at least it seemed as if they did, but when you have people coming to you and sharing with you what they need, they're not doing that lightheartedly. We're coming to you because there are real things that we need. And again, it's not just for us. It's at the end of the day, it's our residents. It's our residents who have taught our children and farmed our land, and the people that have built our communities. I'm from Wahoo, we're a teeny little town, and the majority of the residents I serve are local and legitimately have built our community. And these people just deserve the best that we can give them. So when we come to DC and share with you, what's lacking or what needs change, I would just ask that you really consider that.
I want to follow this up with what kind of advocacy from the front line. And this the reason I thought of this question is because yesterday when I interviewed our CEO and president of ACA, Mark Parkinson, he told me that what gives the most amount of effect is when he gets feedback from local frontline caregivers and owners and operators. So how do you think, now that you've been empowered and you understand how it works, how can frontline help more?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think what I see, when I'm in the facility and you're just in that day-to-day kind of grind of getting work done is, there's things that are hard, and we talk about that amongst ourselves. But really understanding why it's hard and coming together to figure out how we can fix it. Not just this is hard, I wish it wasn't this way, but what can we do about it? And then taking that to your leaders, whether that just be directly in your facility and hoping that goes up the chain, or applying for scholarships like this and seeking out those opportunities. Going to DC gave me a beautiful opportunity to not only advocate with congressmen, but connect with people at NHCA who I feel I have enough of a relationship with now that I could reach out to them and say, hey, what would your suggestion be? Or this is what's hard. Can you please advocate for us? So,
well, my last question, and I think this is going to be a surprise question, but I'm asking this for the person who helps me produce the show, Amelia.
Okay.
You're a photographer.
I am.
And you photograph seniors.
Yes.
And we don't mean seniors in high school.
Yes.
We mean America's strong seniors.
Yeah.
Tell me about your work with Dreamweaver and why you like to photograph this subject.
I think that, Dreamweaver is, first of all, just an incredible foundation. And having the opportunity to be at Dreams and witness what they're doing for people who are terminally and chronically ill is just, all of my strengths are like, relationship type strengths. And so I'm very sappy. I'm surprised I haven't cried yet today, but being with Dreamweaver gives me the best of both worlds as far as being a part of just meaningful engagement for someone who can't produce that on their own anymore. And then also just that I just have this drive to document that emotion. And so it's just so beautiful. And
I'm going to ask for a story. Tell me a story where you think it changed your life maybe more than it did the person who got the dream. There's got to be something where you were there and you're like, oh my goodness, how happy these simple things make them, and I'm able to be present and document it.
That's so hard. Just because there's been so many. Like, I could
go with the most recent one.
Most recent
That's
would
easier.
Be super sweet lady at a facility in Lincoln. Her dream, honestly, was to have a funeral for her son who passed away. And Dreamweaver, that's just something that they can't do. And so what they did is, she historically loved having very fancy tea parties. And so they brought someone into the facility. And when I say tea party, I mean hats, table just covered in the most beautiful tea sets and different teas and little finger food
Sounds
snacks.
Like Kentucky Derby.
Oh, yes. It was literally so beautiful. She did not know it was happening. And they hosted it, I believe it was on her son's birthday, her son who had passed. And not only that, but it was a surprise. And she said, I've never had a surprise party before. They had taken her shopping and got her the most beautiful outfit, beautiful jewelry. I mean, she just felt like a queen. And it was on a very significant day for her. It was very meaningful. There were a lot of tears, and it was so beautiful. So
that's wonderful. Amber, thank you for joining the show. We're really honored to have a frontline caregiver like you to go represent us in DC, and at the same time in the photography world as a person who likes to shoot on my own. Thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to meet you at the next convention.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Want to connect with leaders in long-term care? Go to www.ltcheroes.com to join our community on Facebook and LinkedIn. Get exclusive access to marketing tips, SOPs, and insights from prominent voices in the industry. Only at LTC Heroes.